Thanks to everyone who is joining us today. We're really excited to talk about our research ethics concentration within our Masters of Arts in Bioethics and Medical Humanities at Case Western Reserve University. If during any time during this presentation, if you have questions, feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature on Zoom. So we'll be monitoring those and answering them periodically throughout the panel. And then at the end, we'll also save time for questions as well. So I just want to go through kind of what we're going to cover today and then introduce our speakers, and then we can get started. So a couple of things that we're going to cover today include just a basic introduction to Case Western Reserve University. We're also going to talk then, of course, about the concentration itself, but the program overview. And then we'll talk a little bit about program outcomes, student life, and student assistantships, financial aid, and the application process deadline. So I'm Dr. Leah Jeanette. I'm a senior research associate here in the Department of Bioethics at Case. You've probably seen lots of emails from me, so that's probably why my name might be familiar to you. So I'd like to introduce our speakers. So first we have Dr. Aaron Goldenberg. He is Vice Chair and Director of Research, as well as an Associate Professor of Bioethics here at Case. We have Dr. Marcia Mickey, who is the Associate Director of the Research Ethics Concentration, and she's also an Assistant Professor of Bioethics. Both Dr. Goldenberg and Dr. Mickey are heavily involved in research projects, and so they'll talk about that towards the end as well. And we also have two students joining us. Emily Gorjank and Keely Newsom are both current students who, frankly, are almost finished. They're writing final papers, and thanks to them for taking time out of their day from writing these papers to join us. So we're very excited to hear from all four of these individuals. So with that, I will turn it over to the panel.
Terrific. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Dr. Jeanette. And I'm so appreciative of our students, Keely and Emily, for joining us today. I know you're in the last phase of getting everything done for the program, and we're so happy that you're with us today. Dr. Goldenberg, I thought maybe you could do this overview of Case Western because you've been here a bit longer than I have. I started here in the fall of 2017, and that pales in comparison to your time here at Case.
Great, thank you, and welcome everybody. It's great to talk with you remotely and to tell you a little bit about the program and about Case and about research going on here. So I have been a part of the Case Western Reserve University community since 1999. In 1999 to 2000, I did the master's program here that we're talking about today. And then was affiliated with the university for a few years as I completed my master's in public health at the University of Michigan. But I still kind of stayed in touch with the department and did some work with the department, specifically with certain faculty members. I then rejoined the department in 2004 as a PhD student. I was a PhD student here for 4 years and then joined the faculty when I finished my PhD. So I also did a small kind of fellowship in between my PhD and my faculty appointment. So I think I've experienced life at Case Western as a student, a fellow, a PhD student, and a faculty member. So I've kind of come to really know the university very well and really love the university. It's really a remarkable place as both an academic institution, as an academic community. We have a lot of just really amazing programs that are nationally and internationally ranked. And, you know, it's really seen as a hub for research and a hub for academic life in not just Northeast Ohio and not just Ohio, but really regionally and nationally. And, you know, if we have any questions at the end, I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but suffice it to say, you know, it's just a really special place. And a lot of people don't know what a gem it is in terms of research and academic programs. And so for those considering, being here and being in the program, know you'd be joining just a vibrant and a really top academic institution with just really first-class faculty, first-class students, and just so many opportunities to get involved as a student and here in campus life. And we'll talk a little bit later about Cleveland. And it's just a really special place, and it's just really amazing faculty and amazing programs. You can see, yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
Were you looking at the pictures?
Yeah, no, it's great. The pictures. So you can see the pictures here are of one of the quads. So the university kind of split into different quads. This is the quad that has engineering, and it has a number of the graduate programs, and you're kind of looking towards the med school in the big picture. And then the smaller picture here is our biomedical research building, which is attached to our med school, which is where our offices are, and many of our classes are in this building. It's also where we get our coffee and our cafeteria, but it's a newer building. It's a newer part of the School of Medicine, and is lab space and office space and classroom space, and it's a really great campus for learning. I will hand it back to you, Marcia.
Oh, sure. So I think we have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if we need to address those, Dr. Jeanette, or if we should just go ahead.
No, I think these are great questions for us to talk about, right? So, one of the questions we think about when we talk to prospective students, is why bioethics and medical humanities? Why do these things matter? And ultimately, which we'll get into, how do these help in thinking about research? How do these help in thinking about careers? So either Dr. Mickey or Dr. Goldenberg, do you guys want to talk a little bit about why bioethics and medical humanities? Why do these things matter?
Go for it, Marcia, and then I can add on.
Okay. I mean, I think this first point is, it's hard to stress that strongly enough, that the healthcare industry touches us all. And I would add to that the biomedical research industry that then shapes the healthcare industry touches us all. And it seems so distant from our lives, what people are doing in laboratories or in clinical research. But that shapes every single intervention and every single practice that you interact with as a patient, and that healthcare providers then live their lives doing. And so the ways that that research is conducted, the ways that healthcare practice is conducted, really, shapes our lives literally from before birth to after death. And in fact, birth and death are some of the places where bioethicists spend a lot of their thought and time thinking, but everything in between as well. One of the areas that Dr. Goldenberg and I both spend a lot of time thinking about is in translation, the translation of technologies from research into practice. That whole process from an idea through a proof of concept, through clinical research, and then initial integration into healthcare, and then becoming sort of an everyday part of our lives as patients and as some of us as healthcare providers. And that kind of constant advancement that's happening all the time leads to really, really huge questions. It leads to concerns about ethics. It leads to concerns about sort of big human questions like identity and what it means to be at risk for a medical condition, what it means to be in a family that's at risk for a medical condition. And so when we think about these questions, we're thinking about them as questions, but we're also thinking, what should we do about them? And that's one of the things that I love about bioethics and medical humanities. I'm a social scientist by training. I'm an anthropologist, and we ask a lot of big questions, but we don't tend to take them as often all the way to what should we do about it? And that's what bioethics tends to do. We're involved in governance of research and practice. We're involved in shaping how clinicians are trained to provide good care. We're involved in talking to patients and communities about the kind of care that they want and the kind of research they think should be done. And then that leads us to issues of social justice, which maybe is something that Dr. Goldenberg wants to talk about a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me say two things. I'll start by saying you can imagine that, right now we're at a moment in history where these questions in bioethics and medical humanities are becoming even more salient as, we search for both, new testing modalities for COVID, as we search for treatments for COVID. The idea of trying to merge public health responses and medical responses in the middle of a pandemic means having to make tough choices and having to make really, really difficult decisions around who gets treatment and who doesn't, around how treatments are developed ethically, around what kinds of support do underserved communities who are already vulnerable are experiencing. And so I think, for us in bioethics and medical humanities, this experience and tragedy that the world is going through right now is just kind of highlighting the need for why bioethics and medical humanities really does touch on everything. And one of those areas really is in the area of social justice and practice, right? We know we live in a society and a culture and a country where there is unequal access to healthcare. There's unequal access to the benefits of biomedical research and biomedical sciences. And bioethics and medical humanities scholars for a long time have been very, very interested and concerned with how do we build structures, how do we envision new structures for healthcare that address issues of social justice, address issues of access, and address issues of health disparities. So a lot of what many of our students, whether you're interested in research, whether you're interested in clinical work, all of that touches on issues of social justice and the importance of thinking about health disparities, both through the lenses of bioethics and medical humanities.
Absolutely, and that's an area that we talk a lot about, the two of us talk a lot about, an area that this department, I think, is inexorably moving toward, is really, really focusing on community health and health disparities as an area that we're particularly interested in addition to all the things that we already do around clinical ethics, research ethics, translational ethics, medical humanities, and other things. I wanted to specifically talk a bit about research ethics today because that's the main focus of today's webinar is the concentration. So I think that when people think about bioethics, they often think about clinical ethics and the ways that clinical ethicists may guide healthcare literally in hospitals, walking around, working with doctors and nurses and social workers and patients and chaplains and all sorts of other professionals in the hospital to make sure that care is ethical, to make sure that care is just, to make sure that everyone's voices are heard. Research ethics tends not to be quite so closely related to walking around a hospital floor. But what it does is it really looks at the ways that the things that happen on that hospital floor and the things that happen in clinical visits come to be. And I spoke a little bit about this, about how every intervention, every practice that you encounter as a patient in your short clinical visit with a doctor comes out of research. It comes out of research that's been designed in certain ways, that's been designed with certain questions in mind. And we think about all of that, from the conception of the questions themselves to the ways that the research is conducted, to make sure that we're equitably choosing the populations for research and not burdening one population to benefit another, to think about the ways that research is designed, randomized control trials, placebos, things like that have all kinds of ethical implications for research participants. And then also how research is then translated into clinical interventions. And that has to do with everything from public-private partnerships and relationships to the kinds of financial backing that researchers get from the government, from private industry, from patient support groups, patient advocacy groups that may be funding research among members of their community on their particular condition that's important to them. And then all of the ways that research products then get pushed into clinical practice through guidelines from professional societies, through governmental regulation, through individual doctors disseminating to colleagues, to industries pushing certain kinds of interventions. And then that really makes a huge difference in what happens when you step into that clinical encounter. So it matters. It matters to patients. It matters to patients' families. It matters to whole communities. One of the areas that Dr. Goldenberg and I work a lot in is in ethics around genetics and genomics. And that's an area that's rapidly changing. It's rapidly advancing, constantly changing. So even if you think that it's already in clinical practice, think about a genetic panel that a doctor might order. That panel itself is subject to continual change. A doctor could order a panel this week and then next week go to order it, and it's a different panel. The number of conditions on it has changed. And then even if it's the same panel, the interpretation of those results is going to change because research is advancing so quickly in this area, and we're learning so much about the genome every single day. And what kinds of questions we investigate about that, how we communicate results to patients and families, how we support them after they get those results, all of those are areas that research ethics impacts really on a daily basis. Was there anything that you wanted to add about that, Dr. Goldenberg?
No, I think you covered it really, really nicely. It's great.
I wanted you also to weigh in on careers in bioethics and medical humanities. I think that one of the great things about bioethics and medical humanities is how interprofessional and multidisciplinary it is, both in terms of our own faculty and in terms of where students go, where they come from, and then where they go afterward. And maybe you have some perspective on that from having advised a lot of students over the years in our department.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the more than now almost 12 years being on the faculty, I can say the number of different directions our students have taken is pretty. It's just really incredible. You know, we've had students who have gone on to, you know, clinical programs like med school, nursing school, PA programs. We've had students go on to legal professions, JDs. We've had many students go on and do, you know, work as a PhD student in a variety of fields. In both medical humanities, bioethics related, philosophy. But we also have students who have gone on and become heads of, institutional review boards and done regulatory work. We've had students go and work for NIH. We've had students go and be research coordinators at major health programs or academic institutions. We have folks who have gone on and become bioethicists like myself and you know, stayed within academia. We really do have kind of so many different career paths. We really do see, you know, this program as a way for students to explore how they want to integrate both medicine and policy and health humanities and ethics into their work. And people have found very different ways to integrate it. We hear all the time from students, you know, I was interviewing for this job at the hospital, and they found out that I had a master's in bioethics. They were really excited, and they started to ask me questions about the work that I did there. We have a student who was in our dual degree in genetic counseling and bioethics, who got a genetic counseling degree, and within the first week was already put on her university's ethics committee and was rewriting all of their informed consent forms. And so we have lots of great examples of people who did really unique things with their careers, some of whom who had bioethics or medical humanities as their primary career, but also many students who have come back and said, I'm doing X, Y, Z, and I use my bioethics and medical humanities degree every day in this or that way. And so we really do have kind of a lot of different paths. We also get a lot of students who aren't quite sure. They think they might want to be a doctor, or they think they may want to be a PhD student, or they think you know, and one of the things that's really nice about the program is our faculty is so diverse in its backgrounds and in its kind of their own career, our own career paths, that we spend a good amount of time working with our students to try to help them find their calling and what they want to do. And so one of the other nice things about the program is that we really do try to work with our students to help shape how the program will influence your kind of future careers. And I think that that's really something that I really value about our program, and really like that as I was a student, and like that now from the other side as a faculty member.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the best parts about being a faculty member in the department, is working with students who are making big decisions about their futures and going on to do just really incredible things. I thought that maybe the two of you, Dr. Goldberg and Dr. Jeanette, could talk a little bit about the Master of Arts and where it came from and where it's going as a sort of a big picture.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So very exciting news. Our program is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. We launched in 1995, and so we're very excited to celebrate this. We have so many alumni and former faculty and staff and partners of the department, so we're just excited to be able to celebrate this. Our program is 1 year. So a student who does the program full time is going to be able to complete this program in essentially less than a year. It's a fall and spring semester. It's made up of 30 credit hours, and 13 and a half of those are electives, which allows students to really customize the areas of bioethics and medical humanities that they're interested in or think they're interested in. And just some kind of minor highlights that we'll get to a little bit in a couple of slides. We have things like clinical ethics rotations. We have short-term study abroad immersion programs. We have personalized advising. So each student is paired with a faculty member to go through and talk about course options. And, this can also be ways to talk about that discernment factor of where do I go next and those kind of things. And then lastly, we'll talk also about student assistantships towards the end. Dr. Goldenberg, what else do you have to add about our program? You've been around a lot longer than I have.
No, I think you did a great job. I mean, you're also in the position of being both a student and, now teaching and working with the program. Yeah, I mean, I would say that the thing that I think is great about our 25th anniversary, it allows us to kind of take a step back and think about how the program has evolved. And I can say I was in the fourth class. And I can say some of the lectures that were so fundamental and so part of the ways in which bioethics has evolved are still very similar to the ones that we taught 25 years ago. Yet so much has changed, and so much of the program has evolved, and we've added, looking at stem cell research and thinking about genetics. How much has changed since, the human genome hadn't even been sequenced in 1999 when I started the program. It didn't happen for 2 more years. So one of the things that I think is really important to know about the program is that it's constantly evolving to meet the new challenges of innovation and research and the things that are happening. I can imagine, you can, not to keep going back to the pandemic, but that's just kind of on a lot of our minds. I teach a unit on public health, and I can tell you that unit's going to look very different next year than it did this year. To think about and to work with the kind of needs of ethics in public health as it relates to pandemics, that those lessons are going to be very different. So yeah, it's just a really dynamic program that way. So, but I thought your description was great, Leah.
Yeah, I agree. And just as an example related to this year's odd year because of the pandemic, especially this spring, one of the ways that we respond to that was by starting a short-term seminar series on ethical issues around COVID. And almost all of our faculty participated in some way, of our core faculty. And we talked about the clinical issues, we talked about the public health issues, we talked about history. We talked about the medical humanities and health humanities perspectives on the pandemic. And so many of our students came and listened and contributed to those discussions that were really, really rich. That was, I think, one of the best things that happened this semester due to this really unfortunate issue of pandemic. I did want to talk a little bit more specifically about what the research ethics concentration looks like. So within the overall master's degree, we do have multiple concentrations, and the research ethics concentration, frequently students who choose this are thinking about going into either research themselves or research regulation in some kind of way, maybe working with an IRB or working with the regulatory side of some academic institution. And one thing that's really great here is that we have great relationships between the academic side of bioethics and the more administrative regulatory side of university operations around research. We've had those great relationships for a while, and those play out in the ways that students get experience in this area. All of our research ethics students do a research ethics and regulation core course, and that's with Dr. Patricia Marshall, who's an internationally recognized expert in research ethics. And we have a journal club, and the difference between a course in research ethics and a journal club in research ethics is that a journal club, A, it's student-led. Students tell us what they want to talk about, and that's what we talk about. And B, it's really focused on what's hot. Like research ethics, you have to cover the classic stuff. You have to cover where research ethics came from and that history, and then what regulations govern research in the U.S. and around the world. With Research Ethics Journal Club, students bring issues that are really up and coming, things that have just happened, like the scandal around the babies born from CRISPR gene editing in China. We talked about that a couple of times, and other issues around just current happenings in research ethics, everything from misconduct and conflicts of interest to just, should we even be researching this topic? Is this a topic that is too harmful to particular communities, maybe harms the cause of justice by researching it in this particular way? And our students come up every year with things that I never would have thought of. The electives that research ethics concentration students choose to do are then related to research ethics in some way, and we interpret that fairly broadly, but students look around for things that fit with their interests, and we vet them and make sure that they're somehow related to research ethics in some way. And then everybody does clinical ethics rotations in the fall, but in the spring, our research ethics students, instead of more clinical rotations, they do a research ethics practicum, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Maybe Dr. Jeanette or Dr. Goldberg could talk a little bit more about this larger program.
Yeah, so one thing, if we can jump back just to the previous slide, one thing I think that would be really important for us to hear from is our two students who are joining us today, Emily and Keely. Can you guys share a little bit about why you chose to do the research ethics concentration?
Sure, yeah. This is Keely. So I guess human dignity has kind of always been an element of everything I've studied, whether that's political science, which is what I studied in my undergrad, or psychology, or social justice. And I've done qualitative research before, but I hadn't really fully appreciated dignity and merit and integrity in research. And then another reason is I've already kind of known about the history of mistreatment in research subjects, as we see with the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. So I was particularly interested in understanding kind of where we're at today, especially with, as Dr. Mickey said, all of these advancements in research are happening. I was also pretty excited about the practicum, just kind of knowing that I'd be working on a real life policy problem somewhere was maybe a little daunting, but also really exciting.
That's great.
Hi, and then I'm Emily, and so kind of to build off of what Keely said, I chose to pursue the research ethics concentration because I've always been passionate about research and I knew that I wanted to integrate it into my professional career. I really loved my time working as a research assistant during my undergraduate years, and I knew that I wanted to have a strong ethics background to inform any future research endeavors. The best decision I made within this program, honestly, was to pursue the research ethics concentration. Like Dr. Mickey said, the core class for the concentration, research ethics and regulation, ended up being the most enjoyable, informative, and kind of eye-opening class I've taken in my time at this university. The breadth of knowledge, experiences, and approaches to challenging research ethics questions that my classmates brought to the table always led to really rich, informative conversations. And I know that the information that I've learned throughout this program and the concentration will help me in my future professional endeavors.
Emily, that's great to hear. I'm so glad that that course especially, but the entire program has been fulfilling for you in that way. We're going to talk a little bit more too about the practicum in just a moment, but I think that we did want to just look at the program as a whole first, right?
Yes, so I will just briefly, so not all of our students choose to do a concentration. So we have students who choose to do just the traditional program, which is still 30 credit hours. It does open up your electives a little bit more. And it really is personalized in a way to meet educational goals. And then we also have a concentration called Medicine, Society, and Culture. And this concentration is more focused on the medical humanities and social medicine. And similarly to the research ethics concentration, it has its own core course. Your electives would be related to the MSc concentration. There's an MSc seminar that students are able to participate in, which allows them to take and attend all kinds of events throughout campus and the greater Cleveland area. And then there's an optional practicum as well. If you have more questions about the traditional program or the MSc concentration, feel free to contact us. We've also done webinars about these, and we can send you the links to those as well.
I would just also add that one of the nice things about our department being, you know, not small, but not overwhelmingly big, and the fact that our faculty work very closely together. Sorry, my kids are, guys. Homeschooling and webinaring at the same time. Is that, you know, even whatever track or concentration you choose, you're going to get a little bit of everything, right? Those who might be in medicine, society, and culture are still going to get some research ethics training. They're still going to get some clinical ethics training. Those that are in research ethics still have opportunities to participate in medicine, society, and culture courses or activities. We have some students who choose to do more than one concentration. It really is kind of develop what's going to be best for you as a student. And our faculty work really closely together. And, you know, there are some departments that really kind of treat their different concentrations very separately. There's, you know, clinical ethics people, and there are medical humanities people, and there are bioethics people. And we really don't see it that way. We all work with each other. We all teach with each other. And we really try to build a program that allows students to specialize, to have something that, you know, so exactly what you heard before. If someone has a really keen interest in research and it's a passion of theirs to think about research and research ethics, great. Then that's a great concentration. It is a great way to go. But you're still going to get a very full education in all of these other areas as well. And so it creates a very well-rounded master's program, whatever kind of specialty you go in. And that's something that I think we take a lot of pride and excitement in, is being able to give our students that full experience and giving them opportunities to specialize. And that's one of the things I really love about the program and how it's evolved.
That's great. I wanted to return just briefly to the research ethics practicum, which replaces your clinical ethics rotations in the spring semester if you're doing the concentration. And I wanted Keely and Emily also to tell us a little bit about what they're doing. We have students doing a huge variety of things. And what we do is we customize that experience to their own interests. And then they spend, you know, their hours working on a particular issue that they feel is relevant to their interest in research ethics. Would you guys like to talk a little bit about what you did this semester?
Oh, sure. So for my practicum, I was able to work at the Cleveland VA hospital. And in my time there, I was able to shadow research compliance officers and assist with auditing human and animal studies, audit informed consent processes, attend their IRB meetings, and observe groundbreaking functional electrical stimulation research. And I even got the opportunity to write an ethically informed standard operating policy and procedure for their human subjects research at the VA. So kind of all of the amazing opportunities that I got in this practicum experience reinforced my love of research and taught me a lot more about how the research regulatory bodies within healthcare institutions function.
And then mine was very focused. It was on a specific issue. I was at the IRB at UH, at University Hospitals, and I'm looking at their policy on research with cognitively impaired participants and their ability to provide consent to research. A lot of the themes that I'm looking at are kind of applicable to many research ethics issues. Because it's hard, you don't want to exclude these groups from research because you know that they're fully entitled to the benefits of research, especially if it's understood as a treatment option. But you also don't want to expose them to unnecessary harm and coercion. So it's really good. I know that at the end it's tough because there's not really a right answer, but I'm almost finished with my evaluation, and I can't wait to share it with their IRB. It's been a great experience.
That's terrific. So, I mean, the products of these practicums range from just having the great experience of shadowing professionals in this space to actually producing reports or changing policies in collaboration with staff at these various places where students get placed. So it's a very personalized practicum that students almost always come out thinking this was one of the best parts of their degree experience. I'm forwarding here too. Here's an overview of the curriculum that we were just talking about for research ethics. What your fall would look like. It would include the research ethics and regulation course, and then the first 2/3 of the research ethics journal club. And then the spring semester, you'd be doing your practicum rather than clinical ethics rotation. And then you would do the last 1/3 of Research Ethics Journal Club. We end it early because at the end of the semester, students are frequently wrapping up many other things. And then also your elective. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the curriculum, Dr. Jeanette?
Yeah, there's two things that I wanted to highlight. One is in the fall semester and in the spring semester, you're taking the 6 credit hour course called Foundations of Bioethics 1 in the fall and Foundations of Bioethics 2 in the spring. And this is really that core course that all students, regardless of concentration or not, are taking. And as Dr. Goldenberg mentioned, this is one of those things that is constantly adapting. So I'm sure Dr. Goldenberg could, say, well, the units they covered when he was a student they were different than the units I covered when I was a student in 2008, 2009, and they're different than the units that are there now. So there are some things that are the same, but as technology changes, our areas of bioethics and medical humanities continue to progress, we adjust that to match as well. And then the second thing I'll mention is our capstone. So all students during their spring semester are going to be working on a capstone paper. This paper really is a way for a student to take a deep dive into an area of bioethics and medical humanities that really interests them. They work with a faculty member to be their reader. And at the end of the semester, they have produced a really great paper about this topic. And some students and faculty have gone on to even publish these capstone papers together. So it's a really great way to kind of end your time in the program and thinking about an area, particular area that students are interested in.
Yeah, definitely. And it gives students a chance to work really closely with a faculty member that has an interest that's particularly on topic for them. And I have to say, as a faculty member, it's one of my favorite things to do is to work with students on their capstones. Seeing that idea from the very germ of it all the way to completion is just so much fun, and it's like it's an independent study. It's like a little mini course all its own. That's one-on-one and a terrific experience. It's been terrific for me, certainly, as a faculty member, and I think students really get a lot out of it too, and have something amazing to show for it at the end. And I wanted Dr. Jeanette to talk particularly about clinical ethics rotations because she supervises those and really coordinates that whole area of the program.
Great. So our clinical ethics rotations are one of, I think, the best features of our program. Students are able to rotate at these hospitals. It's one, in the fall for research ethics students. For students who are in the traditional program or the MSc concentration, they would do a second semester in spring. And it's a way to spend 80 hours in that hospital system being exposed to all kinds of clinical ethics issues. So it could be things like attending morning rounds. It could be attending committee meetings. It could be going one-on-one with healthcare professionals within the hospital system. Cleveland is very blessed in that we have 4 major hospital systems. Cleveland Clinic Foundation is probably the most well-known to those outside of Cleveland. It is known for its cardiology care and its kind of approach to global health and the research that it's doing. But it also has full-time bioethicists doing research and doing clinical ethics there. The Lewis B. Stokes Veteran Administrative Hospital is actually the 4th largest VA hospital in the country. So it's a pretty large system here in Cleveland for students to observe. This is a very specific demographic of patients, which is very interesting to students. They get to see lots of interesting things with orthopedics. There's a lot of mental health services, geriatric services as well. Metro Health System is the county hospital for Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland is located. Metro has a lot of different opportunities for students to rotate, including a burn unit. They do level 1 trauma. And Metro also provides the medical care at the county jail. And so students are able to rotate through that. And then lastly is University Hospitals. This is another private system in Cleveland. And they have an extensive pediatric area in addition to other areas of the hospital as well. And so students are able to spend a lot of time in pediatric emergency, pediatric ICUs, and they also do work in neurosurgery and transplantation. So each hospital system is a little different, and we try for students to identify, which hospital system has areas of that interest them and match it up accordingly. And I'll just jump right in and cover this as well. So one of the other areas that I oversee in our department is our study abroad. These are 3 credit hour courses that students are able to take as one of their electives. And these are courses that students are, they do a couple of sessions on campus before, and then they spend a week either over winter break, spring break, or in May. In these locations. It's an amazing opportunity for students to look at cultural comparisons, policy comparisons, in terms of all of these different topics. Students love this aspect of our program. And we're disappointed because of the pandemic this year that we weren't able to travel for these, but we're looking forward to be able to do that next year.
Great. I know that you may have some insight on the dual degrees, Dr. Jeanette and also Dr. Goldenberg. We have just a number of different dual degree options that students can do, and several students this year doing some of, I'd say 3 or 4 of these, right?
Yeah, we have students in a variety of these things. I think the main point in just pointing these out is that for students who are interested in the dual degree, you do have to apply and gain acceptance to each program independently. And then we would work with you to figure out the schedule that you would need in order to accomplish these dual degree programs.
Great. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this huge slide of program outcomes, but I do think it's important to recognize, as we said, the diversity of potential outcomes for students in our program. We have students who go on to further study in MD programs, in PhD programs, other kinds of programs at a lot of different universities, and a huge variety of different professions that students eventually go on to work in, and a huge variety of places where they do that work. And we're happy to talk to you more about that at any time, individually or during the question and answer session. Because both Dr. Goldenberg and I spend a lot of our time doing our own research, we wanted to just highlight some of the great research that's going on and has gone on in the Department of Bioethics. You heard me mention Dr. Patricia Marshall earlier, who teaches our research ethics course. One of the things that she's very involved in and has been since its inception is H3 Africa, which is a huge program to increase capacity for genetic research and biomedical practice on the continent of Africa, including enhancing the pipeline for Africans to become geneticists, both genetic researchers and clinical geneticists. And she serves on the committees for H3 Africa, working especially with some of the oversight of the program and the research that's conducted. And the PREPARE study is my study that was just recently funded by the National Human Genome Research Institute. This is a big 4-year study that takes place here in Cleveland, also in New York and in North Carolina. And what we're looking at is what happens after people get prenatal genetic results, and what they do with those results, how they prepare for a child with a genetic condition, what that means to them, and what kinds of support they get from clinicians and patient support groups to do that, and how much it helps, what they think about that. We have other projects that I know Dr. Goldenberg would like to talk about some of his work as well. I think he's muted.
Oh, no, I'm here. So yeah, we've developed a number of programs around genetics and community responses. And so some of the projects you see here are related to thinking about how underserved communities approach their access or concerns about their access to new technologies, to genetic information. How do we reconcile the need to address health disparities? And we've done so, you know, over the last really 10 years with a number of community groups. If you look at the screen, there's actually a picture behind where it says Community Voices on the bottom. It's on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. It says Community Voices on Health Disparities in Translational Genomic Research. The picture that's on is actually a picture taken by one of our research participants. We did a project where we had some of our participants take cameras and take pictures of disparities and strengths in their communities and in their neighborhoods. And this is one of my favorite pictures. This picture is actually hanging on my wall in my office, of someone who lived in a very, very poor area of town, but wanted to make sure that people saw the beauty that she saw in her community. And that when we started to think about issues of health and medical outreach, that we don't just think about disparities, but that we also think about those strengths that communities have. And we really do try across almost, I would say, all of our faculty have work internationally, nationally, regionally, that touch on a variety of these kinds of issues at the intersection between health and disparities and social justice, and thinking about new technologies, and thinking about anything from, you know, stem cell research to adolescent health to mental health, to pregnancy outcomes, infant mortality. We really do have an amazing kind of docket of research projects, which many of our students, both in the research concentration and otherwise, can get involved in. We have opportunities all throughout the year where people can come and learn about our research and participate in our research projects, get some experience. And that's really a special part of the program as well, which is ability to interact, right? To be able to interact with research projects.
Yeah, I agree. I think our students are probably best placed to talk about student life here at the university. Maybe you guys have something to say about that.
Sure, yeah. This is Keely. So it's a very close-knit program, and the faculty is great at like keeping us engaged and connected, both with each other and with them, and also great at keeping us well fed. Expect a lot of pizza. Thank you, Dr. Mickey. And also, although this last year has been kind of wonky because of COVID, we had a few events planned at the beginning of the program. We did a trip to an apple orchard. We have random dinners, both at restaurants and at professors' houses. Actually, we had a potluck at Dr. Marshall's house. That was pretty awesome. We had a movie night. We have round tables with the staff, and it's pretty good. It's definitely a family, but we obviously have access to a lot of the events that the entire university puts on as well. We have concerts and seminars, and GSC holds events. They held happy hours throughout the year. So it's definitely a very connected university. It's good, or program even specifically.
Yeah, and to build off what Keely said, our cohort within this program is really tight-knit. And so one of the first things we did when we all got here was we made a group chat with everybody just so that nobody would feel left out and everybody kind of knew what everyone else was up to. And so if you had any questions about the program or like wanted to run an idea past someone or just kind of like talk things out within the program, there was always somebody there to help you, which I think is really unique to this program as well.
That's great. And of course, University Circle, where Case Western is situated, is just a huge cultural hub within Cleveland, not just for the university, but for the whole city. We have a world-class art museum, one of the finest art museums in the country. We have maybe the finest orchestra in the country here, and their home is right across the street from our building, basically. And a huge arboretum, lots and lots of cultural events that happen right in the vicinity of the university, in addition to all the many things that happen in the city of Cleveland. So we would love to have you come share that with us. Cleveland itself, I will say, I have lived here probably the least amount of time of any of our panelists. And I moved here by choice from the San Francisco area to take a job on the faculty here. And I love Cleveland. People who aren't so familiar with Cleveland sometimes express surprise at that. And I say there's nothing to be surprised about. There is so much to do here. It's got almost all the benefits of a really big metropolitan area with very few of the downsides. When I was in San Francisco, I spent a lot of time sitting in traffic on the Bay Bridge. I don't do a lot of that here. I also devoted a lot of my time worrying about sustainability and livability because of the tremendously high expense of living there. And I also don't worry about that here. Not nearly as much, but there's tons of great things to do. World-class sports teams, the largest theater district outside of Broadway in New York City, in the country. Just great things to do, lots of fun, and I have enjoyed it. My husband moved here with me, and he's loving Cleveland, and there's a great music scene here and all kinds of fun things to do. So, does anybody else want to say anything about Cleveland in particular before we move on to just talking about the last housekeeping stuff we have to do? Not so much.
I'll just
You're
say
going to let me be the booster?
It's a wonderful city. I've loved living here. I moved here in Yeah, 99, I moved away, I moved back in 2004. I always thought I would finish my time at school and take off, and I fell in love with the city, and I'm still here, and I don't want to leave. And it's a great place. Lots of fun things to do, lots of interesting things to do, really good people, easy to get to other places. You know, it's not that far of a drive from Chicago, it's not that far of a drive from New York, so it's very central location. Pittsburgh is a great city that's right, you know, very close to us. It's just it's a really special place.
And affordable. Housing is
Yes,
great.
indeed.
Very, very much so. That's one of my favorite things, having moved here from San Francisco. Love that. So speaking of affordable.
Yeah, so just, you know, this is one of the questions we get a lot in terms of financial aid. So I just wanted to highlight one thing that we offer is something called student assistantships. So these are opportunities for students to get involved in teaching, research, or administrative opportunities within our department. And in exchange for doing those things with us, they get a partial tuition waiver. This is open to students who have been admitted to the program and have chosen to join us in the fall. The application for this is currently open, and it is open now through June 1st. So if this is something that you're interested in, we highly recommend that you get your application for the master's program in so we can send you this application. And of course, there's always the standard financial aid options at Case Western Reserve as well. Students filling out their FAFSA, you know, grants, loans, scholarships. Our financial aid department is wonderful to work with students and figure that out as well. So speaking of the application process, for students who are interested, the application package includes transcripts for undergrad and grad programs, a personal essay, your CV or resume, 3 letters of recommendation. Because of the pandemic, we have made our graduate level test optional this year. So if you have you know, taken one of these tests and you want to submit the scores, that's fine, but you're not required to. And then there's, of course, the application fee as well. Once we have a completed application, someone from the admissions committee in our department will review, and then someone else will interview you as a student, and you would be then notified in terms of decision. So here's just a highlight of some important dates. As I mentioned before, the student assistantship deadline is June 1st. And then our deadline for the program applications is August 1st. Those are, you know, they seem like a ways away, but they will come up faster than you think. So just keep that in mind. So I just wanted to open it up for questions next. Thanks to everyone who's joined us. I see that we already have a question that's been submitted, and I wanted to answer this one. So the question is it possible to extend the 1-year program with extra semesters to take more classes and study more concentration interests, or is there a PhD option? Dr. Goldenberg, do you want to go ahead and take that question?
Sure. So I'll answer these are kind of 2 separate questions, even though they may be related. The first part of it is, can you extend this more than a year? We have had students do that. I mean, you know, we try to have our students limit how many credits they take each semester, because they, you know, grad credits they can be overwhelming. It's a lot of work, and you don't want to overload yourself. We have had students who work part-time, or some who even work full-time, and do the program over a course of a year and a half or 2 years. You're always welcome to stay in the program and kind of spread things out. I don't know, actually, Leah, maybe you know, I don't know the rules about, you know, if you've completed your 30 credits but want to continue, whether or not you can do that. I'm not sure you can. I think there are certain rules, but you could spread it out to give yourself a little bit more time. Some students have also joined a dual degree. I know there was another question on here about a dual degree. We've had some students who have gotten through part of the first semester and said, you know, I love the program, but I also really am interested in public health. And they've added the dual degree in public health. There's certain limitations on when you can do that and how you can do that. So you couldn't decide to do a dual degree, let's say, at the end of your first year, because you've already completed all of our credits. But in the beginning of the semester, let's say you really like some of the public health stuff you're learning and you want to add the MPH, you can apply then to the MPH program and join by December, the dual degree. We've had a couple students do that with a few other programs as well. As for the PhD program, we are relaunching our PhD program, which is very exciting for us. It's been a while since we've taken a class, and it's a special program in my heart because I graduated from it. It is not directly connected with the master's in the sense that you can't just kind of transition from an MA to a PhD to a PhD program. You can always apply if you get through the program and you think this is what I want to do. You are more than welcome. And in fact, we would encourage people to apply for the PhD program. We're probably going to be taking students every other year. So there is a kind of so we'll be taking students in the fall and then be probably taking students again in 2 years. But if you do have a keen interest in the PhD program, we're very happy to talk with you about it and, kind of work with you to think about, whether the PhD program might be a fit for you. But it's a separate application process. And right now we don't have like a transition program.
One thing I will add to what Dr. Goldenberg said is, sometimes students come into the program and it's hard to figure out what electives you want to take. There's so many great options. And so that's where the personalized advising really comes in to help make those decisions. And so students are able to sit down with their faculty advisor and figure out exactly what their areas of interest are and what courses make the most sense as you plan your program of study. And so it's a great opportunity to take advantage of having that personalized advising in the program. Other questions from our attendees? So I do have one question that either Dr. Mickey or Dr. Goldenberg can answer is, what sets Case Western Reserve apart from other master's programs?
That's a big question. And I have a partial answer, which is that we have, for one thing, it's a compressed one-year program. A lot of master's programs are 2 years. And for a lot of our students are thinking of this in terms of where they're going to go after the program, and having that year is enough for them to take that time to think, but not so much that they feel like they've delayed all the other options that are available for them. I'll say as a department, I think that this is a very diverse in terms of disciplinary background and perspective and research interest department, scholarly interest department. And yet there's a lot of depth in several areas. We have a lot of depth in clinical ethics. We have a lot of depth in medical humanities. We have a lot of depth in what we call ELSI issues, ethical, legal, and social issues in genetics and genomics. And we have a good amount of depth in research ethics as well. And I think those are huge strengths of our department that a lot of our students end up taking advantage of. Do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Goldenberg?
Yeah, I would add two things. There's probably many more, but I would add just the top of my head 2 things. So first of all, I think our clinical rotations that we spoke about earlier, it's not 100% unique, but there aren't that many master's programs that offer such a enrichment experience and immersive experience in being able to see ethics on the front lines of the clinical world, and the ability to do so in multiple clinical settings, the ability to see how clinical ethics and research ethics and medical humanities all start to come together in hospital systems, I would say, hospital systems that serve underserved communities, in hospital systems that serve more general communities. We're building a relationship with one of our underserved health clinics, the Neighborhood Family Practice, to give students an opportunity to kind of see that kind of care. Really, it's an amazing, regardless of what concentration you're in, it's a really amazing opportunity to really get to know what it's like to be in the clinical setting from these different perspectives and interact with clinicians, interact with other healthcare providers, with the lens of bioethics and medical humanities. And that's really, really a great part of our program. And there are some other programs that have clinical work, but I can't think, and I know the programs pretty well, not all of them are as immersive as ours or as diverse as ours in terms of giving you so many different opportunities to explore different areas of medicine and to understand different areas of the health system. The other thing that I'll say about our program that I find really unique is that a lot of programs out there are either situated in like an arts and sciences department, or they're situated in a med school, or they're situated in a different program, and they kind of are in some ways isolated in that program. One of the things that I really love about our program is it's kind of a best of both worlds in a number of ways. It is situated in a med school, so you get many of the advantages of being part of a med school environment and a med school setting, but you're also open to classes and to experiences in the larger kind of academic community of Case Western. And so you really do get the best of being able to take courses and learn and seminars in arts and sciences, in social work, in nursing, and all the various schools at the university. But you also get the benefit of being part of a med school program, of a school that's housed within a med school. And that provides a number of really unique and great experiences for students. The second thing that's also a best of both worlds is lots of programs, even programs that do have both medical humanities and bioethics in the same group or department, they tend to have their master's programs kind of separate. Not all, there are some that are, but ours is really truly combined. So you do really get the best of both worlds. You can learn about bioethics, you can learn about medical humanities and how they're related, and really how much more similarities they have than differences, and how they share the fundamental concept of the values that we look at when thinking about medicine and culture and society and research. So not to be cliche, but this idea of best of both worlds is really something that I like to think of a lot when I think of the program. And not that many programs in the country give you the opportunities to have your cake and eat it too. I'm using lots of cliches now, but give you the opportunity to really kind of dig your academic teeth into all of these different areas and be able to have such a kind of a well-rounded experience. Those are my kind of two big takeaways for kind of what makes ours stand out a bit from other programs.
Thank you. Those are wonderful answers. So for the sake of time, I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you to our panelists, Dr. Marcia Mickey, Dr. Erin Goldenberg, student Emily Gorjank, and student Keely Newsom. Thank you to those who have attended. We appreciate, the questions that have been submitted. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email us at bioethics@case.edu. We are happy to set up follow-ups, and we can talk to you one-on-one about your specific situation. And so thank you to everybody who's joined us, and have a good rest of your day.